Right now, there's a pretty big shift happening in the way that Hollywood is making movies. It's already changing the way that companies approach their intellectual property, and it's changing books, movies, television, every kind of media imaginable. In fact, it's redefining the way that we tell stories. And by we, I mean billion-dollar corporations. No one single company is solely responsible, but Marvel has arguably led the charge and served as proof of concept for this new kind of storytelling. Let me put this into perspective. Since its beginning in 2008, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has become the top-grossing movie franchise in history. That's ahead of Harry Potter, Star Wars, James Bond, and The Lord of the Rings. But here's why that's impressive. All of these franchises are older than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they've paced their movies on a much slower schedule. On average, these franchises have released a movie every 2 to 4 years. Since 2008, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has averaged a new movie every 6 months. That's 4 times faster than any major film franchise. You'd think that we'd be sick of Tony Stark's impossibly good facial hair by now, but that's not the case. Every single movie has been a box office hit, or at least they've made their money back. This kind of repeated success is extremely rare in Hollywood. So whether you like Marvel or not, I think that we should be paying attention to what it is that they're doing differently. I'm going to try to explain the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and try to understand how they're changing storytelling at large. Let's dive in. The key to understanding the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that it's not only cinematic. Yes, there's movies, but it also spans TV shows, comic books, and web content. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is what media scholars call a transmedia narrative. In his essay, Transmedia Storytelling 101, media scholar Henry Jenkins outlines the key elements of transmedia storytelling. Think of it as a kind of super story. It's this massive fictional universe dispersed across every kind of media channel imaginable, resulting in a single, unified viewing experience. A transmedia narrative will not rely on a single protagonist, but on a massive, complex fictional world with tons of different characters, locations, and interconnected storylines. Each piece of media should be accessible in its own terms, but contribute to the larger whole. This may sound like a traditional film franchise, but there's a pretty big difference. A regular franchise will use each new platform to simply adapt the story. A transmedia narrative, on the other hand, must use the new medium to expand the already existing universe. On top of that, a traditional franchise might license their product to another production company, which means that a creator somewhere else will get to tell whatever story they want. A transmedia narrative needs to be tightly controlled so that every part can be fit into a single unified vision. And that's exactly what Marvel has accomplished. It was not easy getting there. After filing for bankruptcy in 1996, Marvel sold the movie rights to Spider-Man to Sony, and X-Men went to Fox. This essentially put all of those characters completely outside of Marvel's creative control. The turning point came in 2008, when Marvel took a massive financial risk by making Iron Man as an independent studio. It was a huge gamble. If the studio failed, a bank would have gotten all of their major properties and the company would have likely disappeared. But Iron Man was a success. Led by President Kevin Feige, Marvel laid out a release schedule for more than a decade's worth of movies and began purposely threading their whole universe together, using characters like S.H.I.E.L.D.'s agents Nick Fury and Agent Coulson to slowly bring the stories into the same realm. In fact, these two characters became so integral to the cinematic universe that actors Samuel L. Jackson and Clark Gregg have been immortalized in the comics, even though Agent Coulson didn't even exist in the comics or anywhere prior to the cinematic universe. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is an astoundingly well-coordinated project. At the movie level, every Avenger films ties into the larger ensemble movies, and Infinity War will even include the Guardians of the Galaxy. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. deals directly with the aftermath of the Avengers' actions, and their Netflix shows all exist within the same block of New York City where the Avengers exist. This degree of consistency in a project of this size is practically unprecedented. In a transmedia narrative, each kind of media serves a different purpose. The Avengers movies are like the motherships. These are the events that we should be anticipating the most. Each one of the solo movies expands the motivations and the backstories of each one of the characters, and TV shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. serve to flesh out the universe and create anticipation for the upcoming movie events. What's most important though, what happens in one medium can send a shockwave across the entire universe. In Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Hydra infiltrates and takes over S.H.I.E.L.D. As soon as the movie was released, the next episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reflected this new reality. and the rest of the season saw the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. struggling to regain control of their organization. This kind of integration gives the Marvel Cinematic Universe a real sense of consequence, which lends it the weight of realism. With the recent success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, other studios have actually started to imitate the model. DC launched their extended universe, which is a pretty obvious attempt to keep up with the competition. Star Wars is now releasing a new movie each year, including world-building anthology films such as Rogue One and the upcoming Han Solo movie. Transmedia storytelling is here to stay. The Production Guild of America recently recognized transmedia producer as a distinct production role, and more companies are looking for ways of integrating their franchises across every single media channel. So what makes transmedia narratives so appealing? The success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has actually less to do with the quality of their storytelling, and it has more to do with the way that we experience the story. Robert Pratton, who's a transmedia consultant, says, "Experience is more important than content." Sure, Marvel movies are perfectly well made. They're entertaining, they look great, and I don't know, they're just good. But that's not enough to get audiences to come to the theater. Several recent studies show that although audiences want innovation and excitement, they absolutely require some familiarity with the material before they're willing to pay for a ticket. This is why more and more of Hollywood's most expensive movies are some kind of reboot, sequel, or adaptation. They just make more money. Transmedia narratives seem to live in this perfect middle between innovation and familiarity, which can actually serve a franchise when the product itself doesn't hold up. Even though audiences and critics mostly agreed that Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad were terrible movies, they were huge box office hits. I know a lot of people that went to see Suicide Squad just to see how bad it was, but it's more than just familiarity. Transmedia storytelling might have already transformed the way that we consume stories. Whereas before we could choose when to engage with media, Pratton advises transmedia producers to put the audience in the center and surround them with the product across every single platform. It makes sense that this shift is happening now when all forms of media are accessible to us at all times through a single device. Even though transmedia storytelling is a relatively recent mode of experiencing stories, it might be reconnecting us to a very ancient way of experiencing a story. Transmedia actually makes me think of classical mythology. And I'm not about to say that Captain America is some kind of new Oedipus, but hear me out. In a mythology, multiple authors constantly expand upon existing stories, creating a story world that overlaps with their everyday lives. In the Iliad, for example, Homer describes Agamemnon, who then goes on to guide Ulysses through hell in the Odyssey. Aeschylus later wrote Agamemnon his own play, and the future of his family is detailed in the Oresteia. We can't know for sure to what extent the Greeks thought that these stories were real, but they were certainly immersed in them. They lived in cities that were supposedly founded by these mythic heroes, and works of arts representing their myths were a permanent fixture of their everyday lives. The success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe might be telling us something about the way that we want to experience stories. We know that these universes are not real, but transmedia storytelling can bring them close enough that if we choose to suspend our disbelief, we can allow these stories and characters into our lives, letting their adventures affect us, and cultivate a lifelong relationship with a world which we know not to be true, but that doesn't make it any less real, becoming, in essence, a mythology for our everyday lives.